Ladies and gentlemen, Napoleon Bonaparte said war is 90% information. Well, we don't want to get caught in war, and we don't want to be caught on the wrong side of the war. So thankfully, we actually have the ending. We have the whole story right here in this book. It's the book of Revelation. There's some other books that go along with it, but you put it together, you find out which side to be on, what not to do. Maybe don't take a mark or something like that. That's actually in this chapter, chapter 13. So thanks to God that we have the playbook and we know what's going to happen. We know what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to stand strong and resist evil that's going to spread. With that being said, thank you so much for joining Project Truth Ministries. I am Brian Scott Williams, and I have my co host here with me, the Hebrew grammarian, Janice Baca. Please, Janice, say hello to our listeners and tell us a little more about what we're facing in this chapter.
Of course, Brian. Shalom, everyone. It is so good to see you guys today. Thank you for studying with us in the Cochin Hebrew Revelation, the Scroll of Mysteries. Before we begin, I want to make sure that everyone has their own free version of the Scroll of Mysteries that you can download from academia.edu. Our link is in the description. But here we're getting into chapter 13, and this is where we're getting into one of the highlights, the peak of the moment, the intensity of these things that are the crazy chapters of Revelation. Chapter 13 has the beast coming out of the sea. Oh, well, we just talked about the sea thing going on. Now, I personally believe that the dragon and the beast may be one and the same, but I think Brian has a different understanding of that, and that's okay. But we have something going on. Something gives the power to the beast, but we've got to figure out what is that gives the power to the beast. Is it the dragon or is it something with prayer? So we'll find out more. But guess what? We don't have a mark of the beast, Brian. You know what we have? We have a sign of the beast. We had that translated a little differently because there's a reason behind it. So all of this is going to be unfolding right before your eyes. This is a powerful chapter, and brace yourself because this one's going to blow your mind. And I actually kind of cringe a little bit because every time we release a chapter, something in the world just goes crazy, right? So, but hey, we got to do what we need to do and put this information, as you said, Brian, into the hands of Jehovah's people.
Absolutely. And if you're new here, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, share this out to as many people as you can. We want everybody to know what's in this manuscript, and it's truly amazing. There's nothing like it on the planet so far to date that we have found. People are still looking. But with that being said, let's go ahead and read chapter 13. And now the reading for chapter 13. Then I stepped onto the sand of the sea. The beast that I saw was like a horse, its legs and feet like the legs and feet of bears, and its mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave it, the beast, his power and his throne, military strength and great courage. I saw one of its heads resembling a wound leading to death, but the wound was healed. So the whole world was astonished by the beast. Those praying to the dragon gave power and dominion to the beast. And those praying said, "Who is like this beast, and who is able to battle with it?" The beast was permitted to open its mouth to speak words of wonders and cursings until imprisoned for the time of 42 months. It opened its mouth to curse against Jehovah and against those living in the heavens. It was permitted to battle with the holy people, but prevailed over all the peoples and nations. And all those dwelling on the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life of the slain Lamb from the foundation of the world shall worship him. If one drives another into captivity, he will go into captivity, and if one kills a soul by the sword, he will be killed by the sword. But the holy ones, there is hope and faith. Then I saw another beast who came out of the ground. It had two horns like a lamb, and it was speaking like the dragon. It did great wonders before the first beast, and it made those dwelling on the ground pray to the first beast, whose wounds were healed. It made fire fall from heaven before mankind. It inflamed the children of mankind with signs and wonders. And it told those dwelling on the earth to make an idol of the beast, whose wounds from the sword were healed. And it was permitted to give to the idol of the beast a spirit and a soul, so that it would be able to speak. And whoever did not want to pray to the idol of the beast would be killed. It made them all, great and the small, the wealthy and the poor, the slaves and the free, take a sign in his right hand and on their foreheads, so that the only one who has the sign in his hand or forehead, or the name belonging to the beast, or the number of its name, would be able to buy or sell. Here is wisdom and understanding. Point one who understands to calculate the number of the beast, for it is a number belonging to a person. For you will discover the sum is 666. Before we go ahead and start reading, just want to say that we are giving you the best possible information. There are many ways to view these future events. These are prophecy and future events foretold. So we are not saying this is 100% what's going to happen, but we're giving you the best information, the most likely. There's a high percentage for this, a high percentage for that. And with that being said, we're going to still leave the door open because maybe it's something that we haven't even thought of before. There's been all these theories of how end times is going to play out. Some of them rise and some of them fall. Some of them just disappear over the years. But we are going to keep our eyes open because our dedication is to the truth and following the truth, whatever it may be and wherever it may take you. So just want to say that. Please keep your eyes open and your mind open to the possibility of some of these ideas we might propose. Maybe there might be some others that you might come and think of, and we're all ears to hear that as well. All right, verse 1 for chapter 13, and it says, Then I stepped onto the sand of the sea. Now, Janice, is this one of the creatures stepping onto the sea, or is this John talking about him stepping onto the sea?
Well, it appears in this case that it's John who's narrating, and John is saying that I stepped onto the sea. So he's the one who seems to be personally experiencing this. And so he's now presented in a new situation, standing on the sands of the sea. So I would say this is John.
Yeah. It looks like that to me, but I just want to say, people, go check your different versions out there. A lot of these Bible versions will take this verse and stick it on the end of chapter 12. Well, if you go check the NSAB and the complete Jewish Bible, they have the dragon is standing on the sand of the sea. So that's pretty strange to see different versions out there trying to do different things with who is this particular person standing on the sea. To me, in the Cochin, looks like John is stepping onto the sand of the sea. That's what I see.
But Brian, it also looks like this word where he's saying dorachati, I stepped, but it seems to be more like a military, I'm ready for battle step. I'm at a stance. He's got his legs planted and he is ready for some kind of battle to begin. This seems to be, to me, a military type stance by the word that we're seeing here in the Hebrew.
Yep. Very interesting.
Absolutely. So let the battles begin.
Mhm. All right, we have Revelation 1b, that's Cochin verse 2, in which it says, "And I saw a beast come out of the sea, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns, and on its horns 10 crowns, and on its heads names of slander and mockery."
So, Brian, I think you and I may see things a little differently on this, but I personally look at the description of the beast and I have to think that my suspicion that the beast and the dragon may be one and the same because of their description seems to be the same. Now, the reason why I find that a good option is because the dragon is a sea monster, right? So he's a sea monster, and now this beast, which could be a more general term of the dragon sea monster coming out of the sea, and which would be appropriate for a sea monster to be coming out of the sea. So is that true? I don't know, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, this is just something that I've recently come to think about, and I, people can take it for whatever they want. I was thinking, how Satan mocks, and well, first of all, for this whole chapter, ladies and gentlemen, the last chapter, the thing that I wanted people to keep in the back of their mind was the Exodus story, and in this chapter, I want people to keep in their mind Satan mocks God, copies God, or mimics God. So keep that in the back of your mind. Now, when I was going back through this, I kept seeing that, oh, there's some kind of copy mockery here. And I was looking at, well, we have the dragon, we have the sea beast creature, and we have the land beast creature. And you can see how the dragon gives power to these other two beasts, or he's like summoning them, and then he's in control of them. And, there's almost this unity between all three. And then I started thinking, well, I don't personally believe in a trinity. I think it's more like a biunity. I do believe Yeshua is divine. However, in the cult world, there's trinities everywhere. Satan is like using trinities all over the place. Even in mainstream Christianity, they believe a trinity like doctrine. And why wouldn't Satan, kind of copy and mimic something like that? And so I see that there's the dragon, who's Satan. We know he's Satan. And in the English, he's referred to as red dragon, but in ours, we know he's not red. By the way, that's where people get the idea that Satan is red. That's where they get the red skin from, that the dragon is red. But we have the dragon, then we have the sea beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, and in the English version, he's like a leopard. Well, we don't have the leopard part. So then we have the second beast, that's the land beast, and it has 2 horns. So I was thinking, could this be like this institution driven satanic unity trinitary type idea that really, when you look at the beast, kind of like when Yeshua was saying, when you look at me, you've seen the Father. But in this case, this is the reverse. This is the mockery. This is when you look at the first beast and the second beast, you're actually seeing the dragon, that's Satan, because Satan is super connected and unified with them. He's summoned them and now he's in control of them. And of course, we know all three of them are, wicked to the core. So I don't know. It's just an idea that came across. What do you think about that?
Well, it sounds like an interesting thought. I mean, I can't say one way or the other. In this language, it's a lot of analogies, metaphors, it's there's a lot of pictures that he's trying to describe something going on, and he's just simply telling his story. Now, because it's so far in the future, there's a lot of things he will not be able to understand because of the day that we're in. We're in the high technology day. And these are things that maybe he wouldn't see. And maybe just simply that the Father gave him this vision of the animals because it will be maybe clearer pretty soon. Unfortunately, I think that it may be sooner than we think that we will see that this will come to a better understanding as what we're looking
Yeah.
at.
As
So
things develop, it's going to
I
be
think so.
more obvious. Absolutely. Now,
I do think so.
I want to point out another thing that I saw for this verse, and keep in mind, I'm trying to point out some of this copying that Satan does, because he's not a creator. He takes whatever God has created and he perverts it, twists it,
That's right.
changes it. He's not a creator. And so if you see in this verse, you see it says 7 heads, 10
Mm,
horns. Well, 7 is a biblical number, and 7 refers to the number for God or divine perfection or completeness. So Satan is taking one of God's numbers and using it for himself. And then
mm,
you have 10 here. 10 relates to human governments and law, and that also relates to completeness. So Satan is going to be using these godly numbers, and maybe he's trying to get, people, biblical people, to be on board with him. Like, see, he's got 10 nations. He's got 10 nations here, or 7 nations, whichever, 7 kingdoms. This might be something that he might use to sway people over into following him.
mm. That's a very good point, Brian. And, considering also that the Father is also releasing him upon the earth,
Mhm.
that this also relates that he's going to do a perfect and complete work in this world because he's going to eradicate the atrocities of this world. And so, in essence, it does essentially point back
Mhm.
to Jehovah
Yeah.
because he's doing a complete work. So,
Yeah. He's in
and
control. No
he is in
mistake.
control. He is in control.
And just like all the people in the ancient times, God will use the enemy to shape the world, to change things, and to get his will done. And in this
Mm,
case, we're going to have to go through some tribulation to be shaped, and we're going to have to go through some bad, evil world cataclysms so that
mm,
we can be the righteous people on the other side to do his will in the kingdom. He's preparing us. And so we're lucky to be in this time period. I know that sounds crazy considering all the things that we're going to be reading here in Revelation, but we
well,
really are blessed. You have no idea, people.
I honestly think that in the millennium, we're going to be actually meeting. They're going to be those that have gone before us, the ancestors before us will say, "Oh my goodness, we've only seen this in visions and dreams, and you've actually experienced it. Sit down and tell me your story. Tell me what you saw." Because we will have the firsthand experience when they only saw it in a vision or a dream.
Mhm.
And so I think that we do have a special part in this, and we were selected to be a people to be existing during this time. And
Yeah,
I say we because we see so many things going on today that it almost seems like that we're right at that precipice of that point of change that things are about to happen. We see all these things that is going on, and it sure seems like we're at that point.
absolutely. Now, before we move on to the next verse, I just want to say, this is some of these things to be thinking about. We have the dragon, and then we have the first beast and the second beast. Well, some people out there have theorized, could this first beast be the Antichrist, or could it be the false prophet? Just something to think about before we move on.
Yeah.
All right, now we're on verse 2, and that's verse 3 for the Cochin. And it says, "The beast that I saw was like a horse, its legs and feet like legs and feet of bears, and its mouth like the mouth of a lion." Hey, I like lions. 10 out of 10 on lions. And the dragon gave it, the beast, his power and his throne, military strength, and great courage.
This
Well,
is interesting.
yeah, this is a fascinating verse, and I definitely see some differences here with what we have in the regular English.
We do see differences. One of the things I do want to mention, the dragon has given his power to the beast, and even his throne, his military strength. Now, the reason why military strength is here, that word truly does mean strength, but the way it's been used in the other verses is that it's used like a military type strength. When you look at the footnote of 359, you can see the word is actually in Judges 8:21 and Isaiah 36:5. Now, it does certainly mean strength, but in these cases, it has been used like similar to a military type strength. And that's why you see that listed there or translated as military strength. So it's seems to have. So now you've got John who steps up on the sands of the shore. He's got his feet planted, right? And so he's like at a stance, like I'm ready for war. And now you've got here the dragon who's been given this type of strength, and it seems like it's a military type strength. So now the dragon and the beast, or I should say the dragon gave the power and his military strength to the beast. And so now the beast makes me wonder, Brian, if
Mhm.
now it's a theory, but the dragon, which is Satan, is giving this power to the beast. Almost seems like a military type
Yeah.
authority around the world type
They
beast, you
they
know?
they created some kind of large military structure, institution,
Yes,
empire, perhaps. Maybe we can get into some of
true.
the empires in a little bit later. But when I'm looking at this, I'm seeing it was like a horse. Well, horses are like used in battle, especially in ancient
Mm,
times. It's military. You're marching on your horses, and it had legs and feet, and the
mm.
legs, feet were like the bears, so they had claws. That's for striking. So they're fast and they can strike. And then out of their mouth is like the mouth of a lion. That means they're loud, they're roaring, they're they're fast, ferociously weaponized, and they are loud, and everyone hears it. So this sounds like military talk here,
Hmm.
with biblical animal imagery. That's what I'm seeing here.
Agreed. And when you look up in the BDB or the Halot, the Hebrew Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament, you can look up the word for lion, and it actually it can relate to violent men or a violent situation. So the lion then seems to represent this violence that comes with it.
Mhm.
So a mouth of a lion that has violence.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Yep.
Now,
Yep.
speaking of this lions, if we flip over to the King James,
Uh-huh.
now if we look at the King James, we have a noticeable difference here in the verse 2 for the English. We have leopard says, I saw was like unto a leopard. Now, we also have lion in this verse. You see, it says the mouth of a lion, but that's two different cats. Lions are much more superior than a leopard. Just want to say that for everybody out there. I'm gonna get off my lion train. I'm sorry. But anyways, it's in the King James. There's a leopard here. But if we flip back to our Cochin, we don't have leopard. We just says like a horse, legs and feet, like legs and feet of bears. So strong, mighty bears with claws on them. We don't have this leopard here. This all of a sudden the imagery of this sea beast creature is not having leopard like a leopard. So you can't inject the idea of that have this leopard stripes and skin, and that's not what's there.
I
So
do find that fascinating, Brian.
mhm.
But you know what it seems to mean, though, is that it's fast. The leopard is
Mhm.
fast, the horse is fast. And
Yeah.
why we have a horse versus the leopard, I don't know, but it does seem to indicate speed, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. Look at the scriptures, 2009 that has leopard. Let's go ahead and see if the Murdoch has it. Yep, it says it was
It
like a
does.
leopard. Should we go ahead and check the Crawford?
Yeah, let's check the Crawford and see what it has.
Okay. All right, and it says of a leopard right there.
It does. It
So,
says of a leopard.
yep. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
So it is interesting because, again, it doesn't matter if it's the Murdoch or the Crawford, they both seem to reflect closely to the Greek.
Hmm. Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. Good to notice those things.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, let's move on to verse 3. And that is verse 4 in the Cochin. It says, I saw of its heads resembling a wound leading to death, but the wound was healed, so the whole world was astonished by the beast. Well,
Interesting.
yeah, that's interesting. That means this thing is going to be wounded.
Mm,
And, if I'm playing this out, right? If I'm thinking, well, they're all going to unite under an antichrist and they're all going to have like this military style invasion of Israel.
hmm.
Well, could this wound be a wound that Israel hits them with, whatever it may be?
Interesting. So that is, I don't know, but if there are 10 world leaders, that maybe one of those world leaders were wounded in their head unto death, could that be the situation? So here's an idea, though, Brian. The United Nations has actually divided the world up into 10 regions, and that there is one person over each region, which actually could be what is part of this great beast system. And one of these people, because every US president becomes one of those regions, one of those heads of this great beast. Either they're part of it now, such as, Biden being part of it, and Trump will again become part of it, that this will be one of those, whenever it happens, will be part of this great beast system. So it looks like if this is true, if that's what the great beast is, then the US presidents actually are part of this beast system.
Mm,
And my only concern is that if there's one person that has great influence around the world, gets wounded in his head and dies, and then, of course, is suddenly healed and comes back to life, then this person who may already be popular gains more popularity and more influence around the world. And
uh-oh.
so that's the concern that I have, is that this will be a person that will be gaining a great deal of influence and popularity because, hey, his head was wounded. They're going to say this was a miracle,
Oh,
that
like
he,
like maybe someone's ear got nicked.
well,
Is that what you're alluding to?
well, I wasn't going to say that, Brian, but
Maybe an
actually,
individual in a suit who got his ear nicked.
I mean,
I've seen people say that as far as
yeah.
maybe he's one of the 10. Uh,
Hmm.
I, we got to keep our eyes open for that. He
I think
certainly
we need to
seems
ask
like,
questions.
yeah, of course, we got to keep our eyes open for all kinds of possibilities, and he
Hmm.
does seem to be very pro-Israel.
Hmm.
So that would kind of go against it a little bit, but there's a lot of possibilities, people. One
There
of them
is.
that was popularized in the past was the Holy Roman Empire
Yes.
revamping. And that concept was that the Holy Roman Empire would start again and cover the exact same territory, and the Catholic Church would be that beast system that would
Mm.
take over. I think there's some problems with that. The thing that I think of is, well, the Holy Roman Empire wasn't the last empire. The Ottoman Empire was the last empire, and that
Mm.
empire overlaid the same grounds as the Holy Roman Empire. So why would we just pick and choose that one? Why wouldn't we just look at the last one? Because all
Mm.
of those empires were built on each other. So you had the Egyptian Empire, and then you had the Assyrian Empire, then you had the Babylonian Empire, then you had the Persian Empire, and then you had the Grecian, the Roman, which is the Holy Roman Empire, then you had the Ottoman Empire, and they all encompass the exact same territory. So to say that it's only the Holy Roman Empire. Well, that can't be the case. It would be more fair to say, yeah, and all the other empires were resurrected around it too. And guess what? They all surround Israel. So
Mm,
that's also another interesting one to think about. That you also
absolutely.
have the EU, the United Nations. A lot of people, when that was created in 1993, a lot of people got spooked when it was in 10 nations
Mm-hmm.
that were united in Europe. And, people had the idea that there was going to be a German Antichrist, one that was going to be just like Hitler. He was going to do all the Hitler stuff again, 2.0, same history repeating. And, that hasn't happened. Well, now it's not 10 nations anymore. It's 28 nations. So that kind of lost its steam because of that. I think a good one that fits, and maybe we can get into Psalms 83 later, but 10 nations all surrounding Israel being Muslim nations, and that you
Interesting.
have this unification of a bunch of Muslim countries that are either like a revamping of the Ottoman Empire or like a section of the Ottoman Empire, which, by the way, Islam, it operates as a religion and a political government system. So
Mm,
it's not just a religion, and it's definitely not a religion of peace. Unfortunately,
right.
people don't know that. People just accept that for what people say. But that if that one is if that one is applied to some of the events that we're seeing in the Middle East today, I think that one has a lot of credibility because we just
Mm-hmm.
we just lost Syria, people. Syria
That's
just
right.
got taken over.
It sure did.
And the guy running the show in Syria is former Al Qaeda.
Mm,
He's a former terrorist. And we here in the United States had a bounty on his head, and
mm-hmm.
the current administration took the bounty off of his head. So that guy's now free to move around and free to do whatever he wants, and use up the money that was supplied to him. Some
Mm-hmm.
people think it came from the United States. I don't know. It's what they
Yeah,
say.
I have suspicions of that, but that's an interesting theory, and you've got a good point on that, Brian.
Now, I just want to share this with our listeners because I feel like this is also an important rabbit trail that could be beneficial to us understanding who the first beast might be. We have these 10 nations here. Well, it's just so interesting that in Psalms 83, we have a listing of 10 nations. And let me go ahead and read that to our listener. Psalms 83, a song, a psalm of Azapha. Do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God. For behold, your enemies make a tumult, and those who hate you have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people and consulted together against your sheltered ones. And they have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more. This is a future event. Goes on to say in verse 5, where they have consulted together with one consent, they form a confederacy against you. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek, Philistia, that's the Philistines, with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria also has joined with them. That makes 10 nations all gathered together in a confederacy against Israel to wipe them out. He goes on to say, they have helped the children of Lot, Selah, deal with them as with Midian, as with Sisera and Jabin at the brook of Kishon, who perished at Endor, who become as refuse on earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeb, yes, all the princes like Zebah, and Zalmunna. Let us take for ourselves the pastures of God for a possession. O my God, make them like the whirling dust, like the chaff before the wind, as the fire burns the woods, and as the flame set the mountains on fire, so pursue them with your tempest and frighten with them with your storm. Fill their faces with shame that they may seek your name, O Jehovah. Let them be confounded and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish, that they may know that you, whose name alone is Jehovah, are most high over all the earth. So, this is a call against those nations who have come together. Well, it's just so interesting that these 10 nations have never come together in a single confederacy to attack Israel and to be against Israel and to wipe them off the face of the earth. This appears to be a future event. Now, it's just so interesting that there are 10 nations. You pair that with Daniel, it counts nations against Israel. Could this be the same nations? It's very likely. It's just so interesting that all these nations are nations surrounding Israel, and they're all Muslim nations. So that's also interesting. So that still kind of fits in with this concept that Islam might unite a bunch of nations, 10 of them, to go and destroy Israel and to take, like it says in verse 12 in Psalms 83, it says, let us take for ourselves the pastures of God for our possessions, right there. So that's just interesting, something to think about as well. Could that be the nations spoken of by Daniel as well?
Can't dispute that one. I think they're all good options. But hey, I want to draw your attention to something.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice that last line on the Murdoch Aramaic where it says that all the earth wondered after the beast of prey?
Mm.
That it's a little different than the Greek about them wondering after the beast of prey versus the astonished or marveled than that's in the Cochin or the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
So my curiosity is what does the Crawford Aramaic say?
Yeah, let's check that one out. It says, the one, her like beaten, struck to death, a wound of death was healed and was guided, all of it, the earth after the living being creature. We don't have the
Interesting.
prey part for Crawford.
We don't. We do have a big difference between the two Aramaics, which is interesting. So I can't answer that, but yet those two are definitely different than one or the other. And the Murdoch is clearly different than the Scroll of Mysteries and also the Greek. On the last sentence is definitely different, which is interesting. But I do want to bring your attention also that when we're referring to the beast is a feminine noun. And you're seeing here the reason why the beast in the Crawford Aramaic is actually showing her, the beast. It's also the same with Aramaic. Aramaic and his Hebrew are sister languages. They have the same kind of grammar rules when it comes to the gendering of the nouns. Where this is going to be important when you get into further with the beast and the woman and the beast, because you're going to see in the interlinear tables that the verb should be matching the noun, which should be feminine, and the adjective should be feminine to match the noun of the beast. And you're going to see that there's a lot of misgendering here in the with the woman and the beast as we go on. So pay attention to that, because when we get to chapter 17, this is really going to be fascinating as to why and what's going on with this gender thing, because
Mm-hmm.
this is something we should be paying close attention to, because the gendering of the nouns and the verbs and the adjectives are just not correct in many cases when it comes to the beast, and especially the woman and the beast.
Absolutely. All right, now we go on to verse 4. That is verse 5 in the Cochin. And it says, those praying to the dragon gave power and dominion to the beast. And those praying said, who is like this beast and who is able to battle with it?
Okay, Brian, this one is absolutely huge. So let's go down to the interlinear table and let me show you something about the word for praying. And this is the reason why it's the very first word. Remember, Hebrew is read from right to left, and you'll see the first word in the first row that is the word for praying is mitpalim. And the mitpalim is in a structure, a verb structure called the hitpael. When you come across a hitpael, you have two options. Either this is going to be reflexive or reciprocal. Reflexive type verb, and that's why you've got to look at the context. You have to see what's going on and who's speaking and everything, what's the subject and what's the object and so forth. When you see this heat pael, you have to determine, is this something that is being done to or for themselves, or is it being done in a two-way type activity? Meaning that, for example, Brian and I are having this conversation, so this is a reciprocal event. I have actually had a lot of studying over the heat pael of the praying. I went through all the Tanakh, and my theory was that this was a reciprocal event, that every time we see the word for praying, the mitpalim, and in this case, that's masculine plural. So this is a group of people that are praying. And when you see this, it is coming to my attention that this is a reciprocal event. Now, it doesn't appear according to the context that they're praying to or for themselves. It appears they're having some kind of either dialogue or reciprocal event. Now, consider this. They're praying, having a dialogue with the dragon that gives power to the beast. So now they're having this reciprocal event, possibly actually a dialogue with the dragon that's given the power to the beast. Now, my theory is, one of the theories is that this could be a way of artificial intelligence to be coming into play where they're having this kind of dialogue, or maybe it's not even an artificial intelligence. Maybe it's actually a demonic activity and they're actually having some kind of dialogue or reciprocal something. But it definitely looks like a reciprocal event. Wouldn't you say so, Brian?
Yeah, and what comes to mind is that they are focusing on this dragon. They're focusing on Satan. The whole world is focusing, communicating with him, almost charging him up. And with them doing that, they're probably repeating what he wants to be said. And so they're promoting Satanism in some sort of form because Satan is the dragon. So they're promoting the dragon, they're praying to him, they're communicating with him, and then they're going to spread out his message. This sounds like propaganda. This sounds like mind control, propaganda. Well, it makes me think of Nazi Germany. It makes me think of how much propaganda, the propaganda machine of the Nazis was so immense, it went around the world. There was Nazis around the world. And if you don't believe me, there's YouTube videos right now. You can go see Madison Square Garden was filled with Nazis in the United States. And a lot of people in our politics supported Hitler until he started invading other countries and rounding up people. So people can be fooled. People can be mind controlled and propagandized. And that's what's going to happen. This dragon is going to feed and be charged by these people. And by these people, I mean the whole world. And that's scary. That's very scary.
Right, absolutely. So it certainly looks like they will have some kind of, the people will have some kind of direct interaction with the dragon. And if you think about it, Brian, think about how all the people around the world will have an instant ability to have interaction with the dragon. And it seems to me that it would have to happen through some kind of technology
Yeah.
where they could actually have. Now, we've got the tablets, we've got the computers, they do things that are much more advanced than what, I mean, even when you and I were kids, you could see a big difference in the changes
Mm.
of technology from that time. Now we're at a time where they could literally interact with the dragon through technology in some way. And so I'm completely convinced that the Heath Payel verb form for praying actually is indicating that this is a direct interaction, such as a dialogue. And either they pray, the dragon responds, or they're having this direct conversation going on.
Yeah.
And so, and this tells me that if it is an artificial intelligence, then it's the type of intelligence that is self-aware, right? Because my understanding, Brian, is that there's different types of artificial intelligence. It's the self-aware artificial intelligence that I'm talking about, the chat box that are something that is having its own conversation, is teaching itself, and is having its own conversation with you outside of man. Wouldn't you say that?
Yeah. Yeah, and if there is a self-aware technology that runs away from us and becomes what you call conscious, it's not really conscious, but um becomes run off, right? And uncontrollable, that would be a very terrible thing because then it would see, humans as a potential threat. And so
Mm.
if it has the ability to control military or drones or weapons or anything like that, it's going to try to use them against humans. And so that, I mean, just think of it this way. You create this network and you leave the door open for demons to get
Mm.
in, like demons can get in humans. Well, what if demons get into technology, AI, robots,
Mm.
weaponry robots? Well, that would be worst case scenario, right? I mean, they're just going to go kill all the
Absolutely.
humans. And so
Absolutely.
we need to think about that. And you make a very good point about the technology and the ability of communications. Well, you can't separate them this at this point.
Hmm.
Everybody communicates through technology. We don't go and knock on our neighbor's door and speak face to face anymore. We hop online and we send a tweet or we message them. We video chat with them. Uh, People can do this around the world all at once, and everybody be talking to the same person, maybe the same dragon, maybe the
Hmm.
same evil Satan. You know, this is. I mean, we're living in a crazy time, but technology has to be a part of this because there's no putting the cat back in the bag.
Absolutely, Brian. And their technology is getting so advanced today, such as there are people who have sleep apnea, for example, and I'll use that as an example. And they have the technology where they can implant in the chest the CPAP, which is helps the people breathe when they stop breathing at night, and they're tracked. They're tracked. So they're now carrying a tracking device in their body. And it can be something as simple of a pacemaker or a CPAP that is subdermal. You've got all kinds of this technology and they're tracking you so they know where you're going. And this is when, now this is not, I don't consider that the mark or the sign of the beast, but I'm saying that we need to be aware of these things because the technology is key in all of this. I am completely convinced of that because somehow the technology is going to play into that. I think that's why we really needed to emphasize this because we're at a late breaking age right now and right here in our time, and things are about to get a little crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah, before we move on, I just want to point out there's something important about this verse that fits with this idea of Satan is copying or mimicking or mocking God. And
Mm.
so if you look carefully, it says, those praying said, who is like the beast? Now you could see that verse and say, oh, well, it's like saying who could lose? How could he lose? He's perfect. That's kind of like what they're saying. There's also a comparison here that a lot of people are missing. It says, "Who is like the beast?" This is mimicking what Michael's name is. Michael's name is who is like God. Satan is doing this. Well, who is like the beast? Who is like
Wow.
God? We have this mimicking, this mocking again, trying to take something that God is doing and saying, "I'm going to make it mine." Who is like
Mm.
the beast?
So, Brian, you say in that where he seems to be mimicking, Michael's name, then it makes me wonder that could this beast, this is another reason why I think that possibly the beast may be the dragon in, just in more generic terms, that Michael was possibly battling specifically with the beast who is the dragon. Does that make sense? So it
Mhm.
seems like that was who Michael was battling with in chapter 12.
Yeah. I certainly see that these are little breadcrumbs of
Mm,
how this system and these two beasts and the dragon is going to operate. He's going to do things that copy God or mock or mimic God, but it's going to be perverted. It's not
mm,
going to be pure. It's not going to be good. In fact, it's going to be probably murdering people. It's going to be
right,
by force and by fear and not by love.
right,
So, those are things to look out for that's coming down the pike. If everybody's afraid of something,
right.
probably not of God, it's probably of the wicked one. He wants you to fear him. It's
Hmm.
like Machiavelli. It's better to be feared than loved. Well, that's straight up evil. And that's what the
Absolutely.
mafia used to use as their code of ethics. It's better to be feared than loved.
Right.
But I'd say this another one that shows this mimicking here. We have in Revelation 10, verse 5 through 7, we have this angel, this messenger, who has his foot on the land and the sea. And that's showing that God has authority over the land and the sea. Well,
Hmm.
Satan, he has a sea beast and he has a land beast trying to mimic God, showing, well, I've got authority now of the land and the sea because I have all these armies and we're gonna take control only for a short while. His time is limited. But that's another mimicking thing that we're getting in these two giant beasts here.
Absolutely. But you know what, Brian, I want to draw your attention to the scriptures, the Greek to scriptures and Aramaic, the Murdoch Aramaic, both have worshiped and we have praying. And
Mm-hmm.
so I see that's a pretty big difference,
Yeah,
grammatically speaking. We know that praying is a type of worship, but this word in Hebrew is specifically praying. My curiosity is what does the Crawford Aramaic have? Does it have worshiping or does it have praying?
yeah. Let's check that out. And there you go. It says
Yep,
worshipped or
they
slash
do.
honors.
Absolutely. So they're worshiping. And so now we're going back to reflecting more of the Greek than the Scroll of Mysteries. And the Scroll of Mysteries, again, stands on its own. Interesting. So very, very interesting. You see the differences there.
Yeah. All right. I don't have any more for this verse.
Let's go forward.
All right. Now we are on verse 5. That is 6 for the Cochin. And it says, the beast was permitted to open its mouth to speak words of wonders and cursings until imprisoned for the time of 42 months.
We do see some grammatical differences here. And it's interesting that the Scroll of Mysteries has the wonders. Now, great matters, great things, okay, but it's still different. And then you have the cursing, which cursing could be blasphemy. And then you have specifically the word that is imprisoned, and you don't see that in the scriptures nor in the Murdoch Aramaic. But I do see those differences between the three here. So I don't know. What do
Mhm.
you think that well, let's see what the Crawford says. Does it have the
Sure.
the same as the Murdoch? Okay, so it says great things. It does say blasphemy, and it was given authority to be working 42 months, but it doesn't say anything about imprisonment. So it looks
Mhm.
like this does reflect, just like the Murdoch
Mhm.
reflects the Greek, and the Scroll of Mysteries does stand alone on this one.
Yeah.
And so I do find that fascinating because when I hear all these people saying that the Scroll of Mysteries, the Cochin Hebrew Revelation, is a translation of the Greek, they clearly did not do a good
No,
analysis.
no,
Absolutely didn't do a good analysis.
no. It's diverging from the Greek in pretty much every time we test it. So,
Absolutely.
and then to have all these first century Hebrew markers, to have all
Mm,
these unique characteristics that link up to the Old Testament,
hmm
there's nothing like it that we've seen so far. Maybe we'll find another manuscript that's matching, Revelation in the Hebrew shows the first century evidence. If we
hmm
do, that would be amazing. We'd have two witnesses. Now the Shem Tovs is out there. It's pretty decent, but it's been corrupted. There's textual changes and inserts and Greek inserts, and so we can't say that that has first century evidence, but it probably is coming from a similar source. It's just been monkeyed with just a lot. But we're we're calling on people to find one. We're we're
Absolutely.
looking for one.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, wow, we covered so much in such a little amount of time. We're just barely making our way into chapter 13. If you would like to hear more, we continue on with part two, in which we will cover more about these beasts and we'll get to the land beast. And finally, we'll close off with the mark of the beast or sign of the beast in the hand and on the forehead. What does that mean? What does that link to? Is it some sort of mimicking? We will find out. Want to ask that you continue to share this out. We are putting out some amazing study walkthroughs for this Cochin Revelation. It's like nothing we've seen. And we're just so grateful for everybody who's joining this and helping us to get the message out that this manuscript is pretty spectacular. And we're so grateful for our listeners. I'm telling you, the part two is incredible. It's going to blow your mind. We give you so much to think about. That's what we got to do with this chapter. We have to give you a lot to chew on because this is future events. These are things that could happen. And we're not entirely sure. Nobody can say 100%, I know exactly how it's going to happen. No, that's impossible. You don't know the future. You just have to keep your eyes open and see what's the best case scenarios that match up. And that's what we're doing. So we're giving you all these different ideas, hoping we can keep our eyes open to see the truth when it happens and we know what to do. So, with that being said, I want to say, please keep reading your Bibles, people. And as always, God bless.